Welcome into an all-new episode of Panthers on Tap. I'm Curtis Rauen, joined by Bryson, Karbley, and Ricky Raines, coming to you guys on a Wednesday evening. We're in this like fake spring, fake summer, fall, little winter. We got all the seasons in like a week in April. How are you guys doing tonight?
Yeah, the weather's kicking my ass, man. We have like the crazy pollen invasion, unlike anything I've ever seen, and then like 4 days of rain, and now it's like 30 degrees when I wake up this morning. So it's crazy, but hey, it's Masters week. I love watching the Masters. The Masters app that you download from the App Store is probably one of the greatest pieces of technology on this planet. So download the app. You can watch them like on the driving range, watch players on the driving range through the app, which is crazy, and I love that. So I got the hat on. I'm excited for Masters Week, if you can't tell.
Yeah, that hat is pretty sick. Ricky, how you doing?
I'm good, man. I love how everybody gets like amped up for the Masters, right? Like you don't even have to be an avid like golf watcher. People will just watch it. They're like, making pimento cheese sandwiches at home, eating egg salad for the whole week leading up to it just to feel like you're in Augusta, Georgia. It's a cool thing, man. I'm doing good though, dude. I'm enjoying this cold weather again. I liked all the rain washing that pollen out. It has been just whooping me, man. I mean, I have been trying to get over a cold, allergies, everything. So any chance I get to kind of hop on here, stay inside the shelter of my home and drink a nice cold beer and talk football with the boys, I'm always happy, man.
Yeah, we got a lot on tap for you guys tonight. It's a pretty big episode. We got Joe Person of The Athletic coming on around 9:30, so stick around for that. Try to get some answers out of him when it comes to the Panthers draft. A couple of weeks away. Actually, if you're listening to this tomorrow morning, it will be 2 weeks away from the NFL draft. I can't believe it's that quick already. We're only that far out. I'm sure we're all sick of the mock drafts at this point and all the speculation. So we'll talk to Joe coming up. We also are going to drop our top prospects when it comes to the defense for the Carolina Panthers. So stick around for that. We got that all on tap for you guys this evening. Super chat. Don't forget about that. We already have someone coming in right before the episode. It's almost like a weekly occurrence out of this listener, Zach Hernandez. So we'll get to that in just a bit. But let's start quickly here. What are you guys drinking tonight? What do we got on tap? Bryson?
Yeah, I'll start with the place that we've gone together, Curtis, here in Raleigh, me and my wife and you and yours. A Lone Rider, Shotgun Betty. It's a Hefeweizen. Love this brewery, man. The one that we Curtis and I went to here in Raleigh was sick. We enjoyed spending time there. I think they have a location in Durham as well. But the Hefeweizen's really good, man. You can't really go wrong with that style of beer. I figured something lighter tonight would be better, so I don't get as drunk as last week.
Did you get drunk last week, Bryson? Is that what happened? Wow, I had no idea.
Yeah, maybe just a little bit. I promise I have not been drinking up to this episode, so okay. I'm in a better state of mind right now.
So any damage that happens is damage done live on the show.
Absolutely.
Okay, fair, good. Well, then you probably won't remember this, but I had this same beer last week. This is the Fogsicle. It's the double dry or double IPA sour. I just had another one of those and I saved it for this one. But then I also have my old reliable Sycamore Honeysuckle Ale, just in case I run out of the Fogsicle. I figured 2 beers kind of night probably for me tonight. So yeah, that's what I got, man.
Yeah, I actually have a beer that's not Budweiser, and I don't have wine. This is Old Mecklenburg Brewing out in Charlotte. Captain Jack Pilsner. Channeling my inner Xavier Leggett there. You guys can see that.
That's a dollar bill right there, huh?
I don't know if I've ever had these. I've had beers from this brewery, but I don't know if I've ever had this one. It's like your typical light beer. It's not too crazy.
OMB is cool. They've got 2 cool locations. They got like the beer garden type thing. They're a very German brewery. So like they have a big, huge outdoor seating area at their main place. Now they have another one up in Ballantyne. Really cool brewery. But yeah, if you're not into like the German style beers, they're particular.
All right, well, let's get to the super chat right away, and I appreciate the chat for coming in here. We had a lot of folks looking forward to the show, fellows. Panthers on tap back again. Carter, it's good to see you.
Did y'all know that Keaton is in Alaska? Did y'all know that?
I did not know that.
Yeah, dude, he watches from Alaska. How awesome is that?
That's crazy.
What's up, everyone? Making True Money's here. Ricky's mom's tapping in. Appreciate that.
What's up, Mom?
Z Nature. I don't know if I've ever seen this name on here. But they might have tuned in on either Twitter or listened after the recording. So we appreciate you. But let's get to Zachary Hernandez here quick. Because he does have a super chat, $20. He says Hunter, Walker, and Grandma, the obvious choices. My top 5 are Donovan Ezeraku, Xavier Watts, Femi, Jonas Sanker, and Nick Emanwari. Honorable mentions are, is it Tyrion? Is that how you say that? Tyrion Ingram Dawkins, Billy Bowman, and Noel Williams. Definitely guys that will be on our list this evening, Zach, and we will talk about that later. But I mean, this is a solid list. Wouldn't you guys agree with this list? $20. Let's first cheers him, and then we can kind of talk about it. Appreciate it, Zachary.
Cheers, man.
I think my favorite thing about Zach's play here, about getting the super chat in right at the beginning, is that he gets to kind of kick the show off for us. You know, he's like, dude, I'm not getting behind in the queue. I want to make sure that before Bryson gets drunk, before Ricky starts saying crazy analogies, I want to get all 3 perspectives from these guys. So really smart play. But as for the list, man, yeah, look, this list is littered with guys that I'm a big fan of, right? Like Jonas Sanker, Donovan Ezeraku, Noel Williams are 3 guys that I talk about probably a little bit more than you hear a lot of people talk about. Those are 3 guys that I'm a really big fan of, and I think fit this Carolina Panthers team really well. So really sharp list, Zach.
Yeah, one guy that sticks out to me that I'm going to talk about a little bit more later is Billy Bowman. I'm a big fan of his. Brings a lot to the game for a smaller overall safety. So I really like that name, and I think that's someone you probably get a little bit later into the NFL draft.
Yeah, Femi comes to mind for me. I'll be talking about him later. Do appreciate the list, though, Zach, because like Ricky said, I feel like Zach is the 4th co-host of the show on sometimes, because he really does kick off the conversation. We appreciate it.
He's the green flag. I like it.
That's what we like out of our listeners, and you guys keep interacting. Don't forget about that super chat. But let's get into it here, guys. And we'll start with this. The Las Vegas Raiders signed special teams captain Sam Franklin.
I thought it was the Broncos.
I think it is the Broncos. Yep.
Was it?
Yep.
Man,
that's all right. Let's pretend like that banner said Denver Broncos.
You guys are right. It was.
Hey,
there we go.
While you
about the other special teams guy.
Damn, that was quick, dude.
I was thinking about Lonnie Johnson.
I was literally about to say, like, hey, while you're doing that, let me go ahead and say something real quick. But then you pulled it already back up. God damn, Curtis.
So Sam
Fiber's treating you
good. Goes to Denver. Saw mixed reaction online about this between the Panthers fan base. I think if you asked fans like 2 years ago, they would have been pretty upset about this. I don't know. I feel like the view on Sam Franklin has shifted over the last year or so. Do you guys agree with that?
Yeah.
Go ahead, Ricky, because I think we agree.
Yeah. Look, I think that Sam Franklin, it's tough because he was always the guy that you thought was like the dog, right? He was the fire of the team, and he was a special teams ace. He made clutch plays. He was a gunner on the coverages. I mean, he's a good football player. He's a solid depth piece. But you know, Sam also had a hothead, man. He had a quick temper, and he didn't hide it well when he was passionate about something. And sometimes you kind of need to in certain situations and pertinent situations. And those started to kind of rack up. Those became a little bit more of a common occurrence. So it's not that I'm not going to miss Sam Franklin for what he brought. I think that he was a good piece to the team as far as like a glue piece, a personality piece, a locker room piece. But again, I don't really want to spend too much time romanticizing about players that I think you can get very similar skill sets, very similar productions from maybe cheaper guys and maybe guys that have a little bit more discipline. I hope that Sam has a terrific job out there in Denver. They're probably going to love him, to be honest, man. I mean, he's a fun football player. And if you get in a pinch, he can play. So, yeah, nothing but the best for him, but we're going to be all right here.
Yeah, I agree, man. It's, it was fun to watch him during his time here. I think there were frustrating times for sure. And then there were fun times, like Zach mentions, that, I mean, we're never going to forget the 99-yard interception on Kirk Cousins. we'll always have that from Sam Franklin, but yeah, I mean, this is just like they're turning the bottom of the roster. You know, he wasn't a starter, probably wasn't even really a second string at that safety position, but did bring some value to the special teams. He was a good special teams player. I think that hothead played a role in his, you know, versatility and aggressiveness on the special team side of the ball. So there are players in this draft, players in free agency that you can bring in that kind of can bring that same mentality to this defense for cheaper, like Ricky mentioned. So wish him the best of luck, and you know, I no hard feelings or anything towards him, or even people that, you know, are happy or sad that he's moving on. I think that's the fun part about being a fan, is that we all have our own opinions, and you know, we can believe what we want to believe. So wish him the best out in Las Vegas, and and hope he has a good time.
The Mile High Desert.
Yeah, I share the same sentiment. I'll miss the dog mentality. I didn't mind that as much, but this special teams was not very great last year, and I've mentioned it several times. So any turnover there, I don't hate, because I think it's needed, and they need some fresh faces. Say that 5 times fast.
Say it once, Curtis.
But yeah, I mean, Bryson, I think we were at that game when he had that pick 6. I know I was, for sure. You might have been there too. You were at a couple Vikings games. So yeah, that was cool. But like, his role on defense really diminished after Matt Rule and Frank Reich were gone. And he really took a back seat to that. So yeah, wish him all the best in Denver. I'm sure Sean Payton's going to get the most out of him, and he'll be disciplined and, you know, be a Pro Bowl special teamer. And here we are. So no, but best of luck to him, because there were moments when he was on this team that I appreciated, and he brought a little juice. So, but let's go to a super chat here. Keaton, find Adi a home.
Odie.
Odie, I don't know what that reference is from. Maybe you guys can help me out here.
Yeah, you're not paying attention to my Twitter then. So Sarah and I are fostering a dog right now, and his name is Odie, and he is a cute, like, 2-year-old, I would say, like, miniature yellow lab. He's going blind in one eye. He's gonna have it removed soon. So we got to pick the name. So Odin famously gave his eye to gain more knowledge in Greek mythology. So we called him Odie. For that purpose, but he's a sweet dog. He gets along with our dogs. He's very quiet and just loves being pet. You know, he was a stray that was found in Myrtle Beach, and the lab rescue that we work with brought him in and needed somewhere for him to go. So if anyone's interested, please DM me or shoot me a message. Whatever you need to do. He's going to be a good dog for someone. We just can't keep him we live in a townhouse, and with 2 large dogs, unfortunately cannot squeeze him in. But please let me know if you're interested. Cheers.
Cheers to Odie. I'm a jackass for not knowing that. I'm sorry.
Cheers to Odie and cheers to Keaton. 2 good guys.
Cheers, guys.
That sounds like you got a third dog waiting adoption, Bryson, in your house. Is what I'm hearing.
No.
I've seen that play out before.
So let's talk a little bit here. There was a lot of 30 visits this week for Carolina. They had they had like 4 or 5 on Monday. They had some today, which sounded like those were local visits, if I was reading that right. But on Monday, they had several pass rushers in. So just your guys' overall thoughts on that. Of bringing in so many. I mean, it's clear. You look at the top, those 30 visits. I think edge rusher is the most positions, or has the most players in that position group coming in for visits. Ricky, we'll start with you. Thoughts on that? Thoughts on maybe double dipping in this draft at the edge rusher spot?
Yeah, I'm glad you brought it up. Somebody on Twitter made mention of this today, said, I'd love to hear y'all talk about, possibly double dipping in the edge position. I'm going to tell you, man, that's one of the strategies I almost think they have to do, if you want to know my honest opinion. I think that there's a nice depth of quality, at least rotational, but potential starters in this draft class And we'll talk about a couple when the three of us start detailing our 5 prospects. There's a couple guys that we hit on here. And I just think that when you look at pick 8, if you keep pick 8, right? Let's just say that you don't trade back because those are all hypotheticals type of things. But if you take pick 8, you're likely looking at a defender. And I know that there are a lot of people that are going to say Tet, and Tet should be in play too. I'm not dismissing that. He should absolutely be in consideration. They should have that conversation, right? But if they look and they get a defender at 8, and it's probably an edge defender, whether it's a Jalen Walker, whether it's one of these other, Michael Williams from Georgia. I know a lot of people like Mike Green. I don't think that that's a realistic thing for us. But there are a lot of options there at 8. And then when you go into like pick 74 or that 114, where you got those 2 back-to-backs type of situations, that's a great place to take a swing on another high upside guy. Because you're also going to start getting a run on those receivers, on those tight ends, on the offensive line, the defensive tackles, the interior of the defense. You're going to start seeing a run on that in the second and third, that I think you might get a couple of really quality edges pushed out into that beginning of the 4th fringe range. And man, I would strike. If you get an opportunity to get those guys, I'd go for it right away. So yeah, I like that a lot. And I think that their 30 visits are telling you that they are 100% interested in bolstering that position in this draft.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like they're need, and I agree. I mean, it's something I agree with. And you've heard over and over again from the quote unquote draft analysts that this draft is loaded with starters, especially at the edge group position. You'd be foolish not to, with a team that has a edge rusher both at starting edge rushers have a year left on their deal, and one is close to retirement. So, it's obvious that is a big need for them. Bryson, thoughts on double dipping at that position in the draft?
Definitely don't hate it. I agree with you guys. I think that this is a defense that obviously lacked in that position and arguably still do after the offseason. So, I think Daniel Jeremiah tweeted it out today that he's talked to a lot of executives around the league, and that this is a good starter draft, not necessarily like high end talent, but there's so much depth at so many positions, specifically in the edge rusher market, that people expect to come out of it with like 3 to 4 starters. And I think that's something that Carolina absolutely has to do. They have to nail this draft to continue to build off of last season, the end of last season. So I think double dipping in that position to add to that room is something that's definitely on the table.
So, guys, I had a scenario that I put out on Twitter asking folks what they would do in the situation that Cam Ward, Travis Hunter, Abdul Carter, Jalen Walker, Mason Graham, Ashton Genty, and Armand Membu are all off the board with the first 7 draft. And then I just asked folks what you would do at 8. So I'm just curious from your guys' perspectives, if that's how the board fell on draft night, who would you take, or would you trade back? Where are you at if that's how the board falls? And if Ricky or Bryson, whoever wants to go on that one.
Yeah, I think you listed my my dream scenario of how the board falls there, Curtis, because I think it's pretty easy in my eyes what I would do in that position, and turn the card in at 8 for Tet McMillan. I mean, I think I've talked about it 100 times on here that I like him a lot. I think he could be immediately the best receiver on this team. I don't agree with some people that have concerns about his ability to separate, or he doesn't have that burner speed. But when you're 6'4" and you just can consistently win and jump balls, and like it doesn't matter if you're separating or not, you're gonna catch it. And he's shown the ability with his hands and to make those contested catches and just moss people. I really think that he's going to be special in this league. So if he's there at 8, I'm taking him in that scenario.
Ricky, what about you?
It's not that clear cut for me, to be honest. I think that trade back sounds beautiful. You got to have a partner. And I think that the way that board falls, maybe a quarterback needy team could be interested in going up to grab Shedeur Sanders. I don't know, man. I think that I'm also okay staying at 8 and taking who you have your highest grade on, essentially. And if that's Tet, that's Tet. If it's Mykel Williams, I'm okay with Mykel Williams. I think that Mykel could turn into a good NFL football player. I also think that Donovan Ezeraku is a name that I would entertain 100%, even at pick 8. I think that he is a tremendous trade back candidate, but I think that you have got to consider him at 8 if you're not going to consider the guys like James Pierce Jr. and Mike Green because of character concerns, which I do 100% anticipate Carolina not being interested in either one of them. When you look at the fact that I think there was 3 or 4 teams that did not go to Mike Green's pro day, Carolina's one of them. You had Carolina's local day the other day in Charlotte at Bank of America Stadium. James Pierce Jr. is from Charlotte, so he qualifies for that, and he was not in attendance. That tells you
that breaking news. I did not hear that.
No, I mean he just wasn't in attendance. Like that's just awesome. What it. Yeah. So when you,
not awesome, but that's cool that you know that. I didn't know that.
But when you think about that though, it kind of does add a little bit of validity to what we've talked about a lot about how much this coaching staff, this front office, this organization as a whole really emphasizes the culture and the person fit. And that's not me condemning either of those guys either, like because I think the James Pierce thing sounds more like a maturity, more like a circle around him type of deal that I think could be navigated, to be completely honest. The Mike Green allegations, they're serious. And I personally don't love it. I don't feel good about any of that. I wouldn't want to be a part of that. But if you do your due diligence, this is America, right? Like innocent until proven guilty. The guy didn't get a conviction for anything. So like I don't want to sit there and say, hey, to hell with him. He's a young guy, man. Like you got to give everyone their chance. But I do think that this team is very adamant about bringing in good guys, and Ezeraku fits that bill, man.
Yeah, I'm shocked, and I know the tide has turned for Bryson just wide out. But I thought maybe you'd mention Will Johnson because I know you liked him earlier on. For me, I'd go Mykel Williams here. If you can go and trade back a couple of picks and still get him, I would take it. I would do that in a heartbeat because I do think if they can somehow find a way to get either front end 3rd round pick or another 2nd round pick that they can couple to move up in the 2nd round, I think would be beneficial. So if they can make that happen, but I do think Mykel Williams is going to be a fine player in this league. He's not going to get you the high end sack numbers, but he's going to set the edge. He's damn good against the run, something they struggled with this last year. And he's still going to get sack production. So yeah, that would probably be the pick for me. And I do think he's got some untapped potential as well. So Mykel would be the pick, trade back kind of as well, for that. But we'll see. I just still don't buy the wide receiver stuff. I know you love wide receiver. I just don't see them going that route, man. I don't. No one's mentioned tight end though. Tyler Warren.
Nah, I mean, this team's just got
team that they haven't brought him in because Dave Canales talked very highly of him. I get it. Like when you're asked about a player, you're not going to shit on a guy. I understand that. But Dave Canales had some interesting little tidbits in there that it sounded like he did some scouting on him a little bit where it was like, okay, he could be like the QB sneak guy for us and you could deploy him like that. I thought that was interesting.
That's such a crazy thing though to me, right? When someone's like, dude, we could quarterback sneak with this guy. Like we could really, he could even throw like a pass once every 7 games or something like that. It's like, we should totally take him at 8. And that's not saying that Tyler Warren's not good at what his actual job is too. But for me with Tyler Warren, and look, this was a point that was brought up today. I saw it on Twitter. I think it was Dane Brugler said it in an interview where he was talking about it. And he mentioned sometimes you don't see some of these 30 visits, right? Or it was Dane Brugler that was quoted, but it was somebody else that brought it up. I can't remember who it was. Doug. I can't remember his last name, drawing a blank. I apologize about that. But he had mentioned that Dane Brugler said, look, sometimes these guys aren't brought in for 30 visits because they have such a clean eval, right? Like you don't have questions about them. You know exactly where you stand with them. And that may very well be the case with Tyler Warren, who a lot of people feel very strongly about what their evaluation is on him and that they don't have questions that they need answered. That doesn't also guarantee that eval is, oh, he's a top 10 guy, like some of these analysts have it. That
But
eval could also.
Can I ask you this though? Just thinking about Dave Canales' offensive board, you don't think Tyler Warren is high on that board? Because I do, based off of what he said. You don't think he's high up there?
I think he's an alluring player, but I just have a hard time seeing top 10 prospect for me personally. And this is just because I've watched the other guys and I see the impact that they can have. Tyler Warren, I don't think is an exceptional blocker the way that many people think he is because he's just a physical specimen. I don't think that he is head and shoulders above Colston Loveland as a blocker. I think Colston Loveland may be close to head and shoulders above Tyler Warren as a receiver. So if I'm going to sit there and say a tight end is worth my pick, I don't need a guy who's pretty athletic, not overly athletic, to come in. You've got that in Jatavion Sanders. And I also don't really need a specialty player. I want a guy that can dominate for what I'm going to ask him to do. And I think that Colston Loveland's closer to that. So as far as being a top 10 pick on their board, no, I think that he's of interest. Why wouldn't he be? He's a quality football player. But do I think that he's an elite blue chip prospect? I don't personally see that.
Fair enough. Bryson,
I fall in the same boat. You know, I like early on in the draft process, I was a lot higher on Tyler Warren than I am now. But after doing a show with Ricky multiple weeks and over the course of this off season, and learning a little bit more about guys like Colston Loveland and these other tight ends in this draft, you know, I'm just not sure that taking Warren at 8 really provides you with much value at that point in time, instead of like maybe taking a chance on one of these edges like Ezra Raku there at 8. Like, would that value to your team add more like to the bottom line than adding a tight end that you could potentially get almost the same level of player maybe in the second round or third round? So I'm not on board with Warren at 8 anymore. I think it's wide receiver or edge, or if, you know, Mason Graham falls, than him. But I think that's the 3 ways they go. And then I also believe that if the board falls that way, that they are strongly going to consider a trade back if they have somebody that's willing to dance. So if that's the case, I'm not going to be mad. I'm not going to be upset. Like, maybe they're not as high on Tet as I am. And, you know, I feel like a lot of people, and, you know, we'll see how it plays out, his NFL career, but there is talent in this draft at wide receiver later in the rounds too. And I'm cool with, you know, whatever the Panthers decide, however their board falls. You know, these are the guys that get paid millions of dollars to evaluate football, and I'm just a fan. So I'm going to trust it. You know, the Panthers have hurt me a lot in the past, but I'm just like an abused dog that like just keeps coming back and like curling up to you and hoping for the best. So whatever happens there at 8, I just hope it's the right decision. That's really all I hope for.
And Tyler Warren might be a baller, dude. Like, I don't mean that to downplay him either. He may be a stud, right? He may go to like Indianapolis and just have a monster career, and we could all be sitting here like, what idiots are we that we didn't take this guy at 8, right? That's very plausible too. But they could do a little gamesmanship.
I like him, but
yeah, I know you do. Weren't you the one that convinced us to do it in the mock draft a couple weeks ago? To
no,
take
we
him?
never drafted him. I don't think
we did, man. Because I thought
that might have been our first one.
Yeah, that was our first one.
Been our first one.
Yeah, I ended up waving the white flag. I was like, man, I don't want to do a tight end, but you know what? You guys like it, and I don't want to commandeer this thing, so let's go for it. What I was gonna say though is that like. Actually, now I don't remember what I was going to say. That's the worst part about this is that I had something I wanted to say and I just completely fucking dropped it. Yeah,
Tyler Warren might be a good player.
But I will say this: my biggest concern is when has that position panned out in the top 10? Like historically, it's just not a great. It's just not a great. Well, yeah, Brock Bowers, I guess.
But Tyler Warren's not Brock Bowers. They're completely different football players. And you take you took Brock Bowers because of his incredible athleticism at that position. Right? Like his ability to be a dynamic pass catcher, and he proved it, and he did that. That's not necessarily what Tyler Warren's game is. That's not his calling card. But I do think that the Panthers could be wise if they got 3 or 4 30 visits left over. And look, they don't always use all their 30 visits. No, most teams don't. If they got 3 or 4 of them out there, look, send out a formal invitation, man, and then leak that to the press and tell everyone that you have interest in bringing Tyler Warren in for a 30 visit, because they know that the only way that you would be drafting him is at 8 or a trade back. Make one of these teams behind him that maybe do love Tyler Warren, that really value Dane Brugler, man, rile them up. tell them to come up and get their guy. Like we'll deal with it if we have to let him go to somewhere else, right? I don't know. Be a little bit sneaky with it. I like sneakiness.
Ricky, I'll ask you this because I know where Bryson is at this because I know he would want Ted in this situation. But do you think this is worst case scenario for the Panthers if the board fell this way?
Oh God, that's tough, man.
Good question. I know I'm good at it.
It's a good question. That's good, man. You have history in TV. That's pretty good, man. I think that they're really gung ho about Jalen Walker. It's just the sentiment that I get, the feeling that I get. So I think that if Jalen Walker were to go, I think that they would be disappointed. I also think it might be a little weight off their shoulders because you know that as much as they like him, they've got to be sitting there thinking, dude, what is he? Like, is this going to pan out? Is this what we want to do at 8? Is that really what we should, be allocating this tremendous draft capital to as a player that we're not 100% sure of what he does? We also have heard so much about them liking Michael that I don't think they're going to be bent out of shape if they have to settle for Michael Williams, because I do think that he fits so many things that they have historically looked for. And I'll do this little teaser here, but we're still working on the Carolina draft guide. We might even show a little preview of that tonight with a couple of prospects. But we've got like historical picks and databases with all these guys in prominent positions. Michael just checks a lot of boxes for him, man. Some of these other guys that we'll talk about do as well. But I don't think that they're going to panic, man. They're going to get a quality player regardless at 8.
All right, let's talk about a guy they signed this week. Caused some, I don't know what you want to call it, uproar, but there was definitely conversations even outside of the Panthers when they made this signing. They signed the basketball player Colin Granger as tight end. Has never played football since like 8th grade, maybe. I think he played at some point, but that doesn't really count. We're talking about a guy who was signed to an NFL team. So thoughts on Granger and the signing? The guy's 6'9", power forward type. The Hornets can maybe use him down in Charlotte. But Bryson, thoughts on the signing of Granger?
Yeah, first, I'm glad we're talking about this because it reminded me that we have to talk about Duke basketball and how they always do the least with the most. Paid $20 million in NIL money for a roster and couldn't make the championship. So
I thought that was going to come off the top of the show. You're a little late to the game here.
Hey, I forgot about it. I was so in deep on my prospects we're talking about later. So yeah, shout out to Duke. Just consistently not making the final for 10 years in a row. So,
still better in UNC. I ain't worried about it. Go ahead.
UNC's made 3 and 1-1 in 10 years. So I would argue differently, but yeah, I mean, look, this is a guy that's probably not going to make the roster. I mean, not probably. He's not making the roster. It's a shot in the dark. See what he can bring. Going that Jimmy Graham style route with the basketball background, and he's 6'9", and saw some videos of him running routes. Doesn't look super refined, which I guess comes from his background and not playing football since 8th grade. But yeah, I mean, look, it's not something that I think a lot of fans should get riled up about and think that Carolina's going back to their old ways. But I mean, there were other teams interested, other pretty prominent teams. It's a shot in the dark. If it works out, great. If not, then he's cut and we move on. So I'm not sure that this is a player they're going to be relying on going into next season to make a difference on this offense. But hey, if it turns out that he does, then good job to the Panthers. But it's highly likely that that's not the case.
Ricky?
I don't know that I want to do it. I don't know that I want to talk about it because look, I'm not bothered by it. Like I'm not angry. It hasn't changed my day. It hasn't done anything to me. But I'm going to tell you something sincerely about this, the way that I first reacted to it. I was like, you got to be shitting me. You guys just got rid of 80 because you couldn't develop him. And he played football for fucking years. For the better part of his young collegiate career and adult life, he played NFL football against NFL players. And you couldn't turn him into anything other than, a traffic cone. And then you've got Jatavian Sanders, who everyone thought that you were going to get big things from. And he, on a linear track so far, I haven't seen anything outside of what I saw at college, and the limitations are there. You don't really know how to utilize him. You bring back Tommy Tremble, who once again was a promising college football player, a dynamic athlete. a strong guy who understands how to play football, has played football since middle school, before middle school, all this kind of stuff. But you guys think so highly of yourself that you can take 6'9", 240-pound power forward that hasn't played since middle school to come in here and you can develop him because George Fant told you that he could do it. Hey, no offense to George Fant, but George Fant also didn't he have a connection with Dave Canales? Is this some sort of like wonderful little nepotism circle that they got going here? Like, hey, Dave, man, I got this guy. He's terrific. You're going to love him. I'm going to give you first dibs. I got Eagles coming out here too. What if that was just like some local high school? What if that was East Mecklenburg Eagles that were out there looking at him? That wasn't the Philadelphia Eagles, right? That was just a high school team that has the mascot name, the Eagles, out there looking at him. And I will tell you this, man, I'm not trying to shit on this guy, dude. Congratulations to him. Made his dream. It's something that none of us have ever done. He literally went from the hardwood to the gridiron without having to even prove that he could do it outside of having a Beanie Siegel track playing on the background of his YouTube highlight reel. Like, good for him, man. But I saw that highlight reel too, and y'all cannot sit here and look me dead in the eyes and tell me that what you saw there was an NFL player, the way that he was moving. It looked like the air was going to tackle him in the open field. Like, the way he decelerated down on that hitch route, I am telling you right now, that ain't fooling a single person, man. My flag football team of 4 to 7-year-olds is 3-0, and they would have had him hemmed up on that curl route. I promise you right now.
Oh,
sorry,
man.
Sorry.
Oh, you guys nailed it. I don't even think I need to say anything.
I hope I'm way wrong about it, too. I hope that he dominates and whoops ass and makes me look like the biggest idiot in the world. But it's a wild thing to do, in my opinion.
Wasn't there a couple, like Jimmy Graham? Didn't he come
He played college football for a year.
Oh, did he?
Look, that's my thing, dude. Even if he had just stepped foot on a football field in college and shown that he could do it against Coastal Carolina college players, right? Like, it's just, that's a big leap, dude. Antonio Gates played college. Like, and high school. I believe he played high school football as well. Like, it's a big step, dude, to have not done it since 8th grade to go. Like, that's a gigantic leap, man. I just can't wrap my head around it. I can't.
Did Gates play, though, college football?
I don't think so. I think he played high school. I think he played all the way through high school, and then he transitioned to basketball.
So that's kind of similar somewhat.
No,
I mean,
no.
But he played all
8th
college
grade.
basketball.
How old were you in 8th grade, Curtis?
Yeah, I understand. I get that.
11?
Stupid. I'm understanding that. I'm just saying, like, he also didn't play college football, though. Like, he doesn't have the college football experience. Gates didn't.
I guess,
so there's
Curtis.
some, as you love my internet, there is some similarity there. But
yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I guess, man. I guess. And I don't know, man. I can't wrap my head around it. I just can't do it.
This is Ricky's 80. We figured it out. This is Ricky's 80.
And it doesn't have to be. I really want this to work out. I really want him to prove
it's
the entire world wrong.
It's a good story. It's a good story. He's, like Bryson said, he probably won't, he'll be a cut, and we won't even be talking about this in August. But it's definitely a headline, because like even some of the even the national guys were picking this up, and I'm like, oh my god, like Tom Pelissero, and I mean, I think Schefter even was like tweeting about it. No one ever tweets about the Panthers, we know that. Some of these national guys, so yeah, it's definitely a talker. Well, we're still waiting on. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say while we're waiting, throw that Miss Rain's comment up there about the great Max, because I saw those stats that Ricky put up on Twitter. That kid's kicking ass in flag football, man. Tell us about Max.
Kid balled out this week, man. First handoff of the game, got it. Ran it for a 40-yard touchdown, just smoked everybody. You ask him, man, the one thing my team knows, I taught him. I said, what's the quickest way to the end zone? And they'll all look at you dead in the eyes and say, fastest straight, baby. Like, that's what they know. Don't go out there and dance, man. Chuba Hubbard this bitch, right? Like, get north and south, man. I don't want to see how they're dancing. You're not getting a scholarship off of flag football. You're this is for the love of the game, baby. But then he pulled 4 flags. So essentially that's 4 tackles, right? Crucial tackles on defense. Then we had a 4th and 10 to ice the game. Gave it to the little fella on a reverse handoff, and he got 11 yards, made a guy miss to get that 11th yard to get the first down. And then on the last touchdown, just for, shits and gigs, he threw a 2-point conversion to his buddy Luka. And so, I mean, he had himself a Tyler Warren day, little Christian McCaffrey, Tyler Warren day, you know?
Damn, I was going to say Travis Hunter, it sounds like out there.
Little Travis Hunter,
yeah,
both sides
he's doing
of the
it
ball.
all.
Yeah.
Holy
Nah, man,
shit.
it's good stuff, dude. They won 21-0. We haven't allowed more than 13 points. And look, man, when you're talking about these young kids, dude, it's difficult to teach them defense, right? So the fact that these kids are playing discipline, I got dads coming up to me, they're like, hey, man, like if you're free, you know, come the start of the fall, like Dallas Cowboys need a little bit of help over there coaching too. So.
I think we need to sign him to a futures contract in Carolina.
Yeah, let's lock it up.
Like.
Let's lock it up.
Hey, look, man, he's only 3 years behind the new tight end that we just signed as far as experience.
He's
played football more recently. I mean, literally, I was just sitting there. I was talking to Max, and I told him, like, when we signed that tight end, I was like, man, I cannot believe they just did this. And I was like, what? And I was like, they just signed a player that's played as much football as you, dog. Like, you got a chance here, man. Like, I'm about to send your cut up down the street to Mint Street and see what they think of it.
I love that. Let's talk about something that came up. Well, I think it aired last week, but I was watching something on Darren Bates, the Panthers special teams assistant, and he's got a podcast. It's called The Raw Room. He does it with a couple of, I believe they're all former. Let me make sure on this. I believe they're former NFL veteran players. But they got their own podcast, and they had chimed in last week. He's the one who brought it up. That we all probably have seen the comments by now, but Tedero McMillan saying a couple years back, I think it was like 2019 when he said it, that he doesn't watch football or doesn't like watching film on his own. It's been shared numerous times. It obviously came up during this draft cycle. Darren Bates brought it up. He's part of the Panthers staff, and he basically said, like, everyone on the podcast basically said, like, he shouldn't have said it, because now teams, he's gonna get shit for a while for it, and they're gonna be on his ass about it when it comes to whatever NFL team drafts him. So, any thoughts on this? Bryson, we'll start with you because you're the big tech guy. Have you seen Bates's comments, and what do you think of it? Should we read anything to it, or Carolina, if they like him, they're going to take him?
Yeah, and we were talking offline before we got on, which I was not aware of this, but apparently this video is older, I think when Tet was around 19 years old. So overall, I don't mind my wide receivers not being some film savant. I believe that watching it with your positional group during practices and throughout the week is enough for me. I mean, if you want to watch more film, that's good. I mean, it's not a bad thing, but I don't have much issue when it comes from him leaving the Bank of America Stadium, going home and turning on film on his TV and just grinding film all night. Like, I'm okay with him just watching it with his positional group. I guess primarily it would depend on how he's doing on the field as well, because if he's struggling to identify coverages and where to sit down and what a safety's doing and what he's supposed to do in response, like, I think that's a different story. And obviously I think the lack of watching film would show up on the field, but I haven't seen that on the tape that I've watched in college from Tet. And I think that on the NFL level, he's probably just naturally going to be watching more film. And I think overall, I'm fine with him not being this a savant of film like Bryce Young famously is, or like Luke Kuechly back in the day famously was. I'm fine with that. He's a wide receiver. He's not a quarterback, and watching it with his position group is fine with me.
Ricky, I know you disagree. Fire away.
I do, at least to an extent, but not so much, because I do agree with what Bryson started with, is that, like, you don't have to take your cleats off, walk into your nice, penthouse, whatever, loft in Uptown, and immediately turn on the flat screen and watch tape, right? I think that there's no problem at all, and it's healthy to have a good balance of personal life and profession, right? And we got to remember that football players, that's their profession. And so they want to escape that for a little bit. They want to, like, turn that off and get to the other parts of their life. We want them to be so focused on it because this is our enjoyment. This is our recreation. We are fans, right? But these guys want to unplug for a little bit. So I don't have a problem with that. What I think of is this. You bring up, look, you don't have to be Bryce Young. You don't have to be Luke Kuechly. He doesn't have to be these guys that study film religiously and that are really intelligent, conceptual, comprehensive players, right? But I would love it if he was. I think that's where I always go back to is when you watch him in college, I think one thing that he's very obvious is that he is bigger and more athletic than a lot of the guys he played against. And when you have those natural advantages and when you have that superiority over some of the players that you're playing against in that competition level, you don't have to take the extra step, but you also start forming habits of not taking those extra steps and not getting into the habit of doing those extra things. When he gets to the NFL, that will no longer be the case as far as the level of competition. He will 100% have to find advantages that aren't just existent because of how and who he is. So for me, I do want a player that is sharp enough to look at the best defensive schemes going up against. Now, Vic Fangio would be a good example, right? He's going to show you a lot of stuff from a defensive standpoint pre-snap. He's going to show you something, and then it's probably going to be completely different once the snap goes. They're going to rotate their coverages. They're going to move people around. They're going to close the middle of the field. If you're Tet and you don't know what they do and you're not familiar with that and you try to settle, you're going to cause issues. You're going to be strung out. You're going to get laid out when somebody rotates through and you have no idea that that defender is in that zone. So I just think that there's no problem with being sharper. I wouldn't say it out loud. The last part that I'll say about it too, though, from my understanding, he was 19 years old and a freshman in that video. It looked like he was in a food hall or a restaurant. Looked like he was not overly interested in being on that certain show. And there was no context. We don't know what the question was beforehand. So it could have been a question of, hey, Tet, man, when you're done playing football, do you just immediately go home and watch tape? And he could have been like, nah, dude, I don't just sit there and watch tape. I don't like watching tape. I watch plenty of tape with the guys. And he also may have changed his tune in the past 2 years. So that's where I would leave it. But if he still doesn't watch tape, it's not my favorite thing in the world.
Yeah, you nailed it for me, Ricky. I don't like hearing it. I wish it wouldn't have been put out there, but you have to take into consideration when the video was taken, what was he asked, the context of everything, and not just pulling off of a headline. But there's been some things here and there that have come out that, folks didn't like him not running the 40, and then he ends up running the 40 at his pro day. It was around, I think, what was expected. But there's been some question marks there with him. This was a Scouts article that Jeremy Fowler put out today on Tet. And this was an article about the most polarizing players in this draft. And this is from an NFL coordinator. He said, the good is really good, but the bad is pretty bad. The good is elite ball skills, burst after the catch. The bad is not running routes full speed. I don't know if they're saying like an effort issue on his part. But that was just from an NFL coordinator, obviously anonymous. But yeah, all that to say, I think you got to take everything with a grain of salt. It is this type of season where everyone is literally looking for anything to put a bash on a player, even if you want him and you just want him to drop in the draft. So yeah, it's not great. Like, I agree with Ricky. When you're in the NFL, you can outbody guys in college and use that to your strengths. But when you get in the NFL, you're going against the best of the best. Like, you're going to have to find little things against defenses to come and get openings and, find certain things about guys that you do against them on a defense. And that's going to come into play. So I disagree a little bit with Bryson. I think, I think it's an additive if you're a film junkie. I think it gives you a step up on some things in games. So do you got to be a Luke Kuechly? No, but you definitely should be watching film outside of the meeting rooms.
And I'm not saying it's not an additive, but I'm in my eyes, watching. It's not like he's not watching any film, right? He's not skipping the meetings with the wide receiver positional room. They're watching film week in and week out, studying the other teams, and hopefully throughout that process of watching with his positional group, he's picking up on these things that, okay, like in a Vic Fangio defense, if this guy's sitting here, this guy's going to rotate, and like I said at the beginning, if that's a continued issue where he's not picking up on that, then yeah, obviously he needs to start watching more tape outside of his group.
Right.
But I'm just not sure the added hours of film outside of what is typical for a wide receiver with his group. If Ted was just being honest, like, I don't like doing it. Like, if he's instead working out and trying and on the jugs machine or whatever it is, I don't have necessarily an issue with that unless it is an issue on the field that shows up week in and week out.
And it's very possible too that when you're doing your film study, right, with the team, if he's not grasping something, maybe he does ask for extra help. Maybe that's when he realizes he needs to start putting more in. Like, I don't want to pass judgment on the work ethic that I don't know anything about, right, firsthand. So I don't know what kind of player he is. I don't know what motivates him. The only concern would be if, like, he doesn't have that internal flame that pushes himself without somebody else pushing him, right? Like, if he won't run without the carrot being dangled in front of him, then that's not the horse that I'm going to bet on, right? But if he's the horse that, like, sees the other ones having fun out there and they got a lot of room and they're getting their steps in, and he decides, hey, I better start working out too, man. I'm trying to run with these horses. Yeah, that's cool. Like, I don't mind if he has to learn on the fly, but I don't love somebody that doesn't have that internal motivation.
All right, I think we'll leave it there. Again, we're still waiting on Joe Person. I'll keep you guys posted on that. But let's move on to our prospects here. And so this week we are focusing on the defense. I asked the guys, give me a top 5 list of your top targets defensively for Carolina. And we kind of did it over a couple rounds. It wasn't like you give me your top 5 defensive players in the draft. That's not how we did this. So I just want to let folks know that off the top. So when you see the list, you're like, what the hell? You don't have, so-and-so here. So that's kind of how we did it. For the most part, honestly, I told these guys this before we started, I was shocked how different our boards were for the most part. There was a couple similarities, but across the board, it was pretty, everyone just picked their own guys. So let me bring this up here quickly for y'all. Here we go. So I guess we'll start across the board. And this is the first time Bryson and Ricky are actually seeing my list. I saw their list because I made the graphic.
You don't ever tell us what you're doing. You make us tell each other everything, and then you're just like,
well, yeah, I
got
graphic.
A couple things.
I mean, if you made the graphic, I'd be sending you the guys.
No, Ricky, one thing you'll learn about Curtis, the more you get to know him, is that he is a very secretive person.
He is, isn't he? Yeah.
Very secretive person.
Yeah, I don't like it, man. Let me see your tax return. I need to know everything about you.
So let me go full screen here. So this is the list. Who wants to start?
You, Curtis. You're first on the list. You start.
Well, I guess you guys want
no more secrets.
Do you want to start at the top and then work our way down here? Is that the plan? Is that what we want to do?
Yeah, let's just all do our number ones, then I'll do our number twos, and so forth.
Yeah, Jalen Walker has been my number one for a long time. Relentless pursuit to the ball from what I've seen on tape and watched of his games. I'll be honest, he's the guy I watched the most of throughout this offseason, the most games from college. I think he's got great closing speed. He gets through his blockers and he can make tackles for loss. There was a couple plays I watched. One comes to mind in the Clemson game where he's on the opposite side of the line, comes ripping through and makes the tackle all the way across the line on a running back. Production, you would have liked to see a little bit more from him. He had 6.5 sacks, 7 tackles for loss last season. But I think the key here, and we've talked about this on this show, is his actual pass rush snaps are limited compared to majority of this edge rusher group. So you have to take that into consideration when you're talking about these guys. And I pulled these numbers from PFF, but he had 195 pass rush snaps last year. That's that's less than half of the guys up here. We're talking about the Devin Ezerakus, the guys they like. We're talking about Abdul Carter. So Ezeraku had 428 pass rush snaps last year. Green had 354. Carter had 350. Pierce had 254. Jalen Walker had almost 200 to 250 lower than all those guys, and he still put up 6.5 sacks and 7 tackles for loss. He's got 19 run stops, which was 34th in the FBS last year. Carolina would use that greatly. I do think, and I do agree with Ricky on this, that I do think where he's going to make his bread and butter is at the edge spot. And Carolina drafts him. This is how I think they're going to use him. We'll see if it actually pans out the way. He's going to majority. Can I talk? Most of the time, he's going to be at the edge spot, but I think they're going to deploy him in different packages, either as a spy or out as a linebacker. And you're going to be able to use him as like a jack of all trades, kind of a joker piece in there, along with Trayvon Merrick, who I think they're going to use as a kind of a joker piece as well. So I think he gives you versatility on the defense, but I think he's a hell of an edge rusher if he's given that full time. I really do. I think he's going to be elite. He's strong as hell. He's got some really good tape. Hands down, my favorite player in this draft outside of Mason Graham, who I don't think is going to be there for Carolina. So he is at the top of my board for the first spot in the defensive targets.
And I'll go quickly. I'll go quickly because I know I cannot give a draft profile like the great Ricky Raines can, and since he's both one of our favorite prospects in this class, Ezeraku, I mean, just simply looking at the sack numbers, right? He was one sack behind Mike Green for the lead in the country at 16.5. I think I haven't done an extremely deep dive into his tape, but from what I have seen, he is very technical, like technician. The moves that he has, he's very intentional, and he's good at it. He's really good at it. He ran a 4.62 40. He's got the speed. I think he's just a really enticing prospect there, and his stock keeps rising and rising and rising the closer we get to the draft. And Ricky mentioned it early on that maybe this is a guy that you look at 8 if Jalen Walker's off the board, or hell, even if he's not. Ezeraku is just a pure speed rusher, and this is what this team needs. I think he would immediately come in and provide a spark to that edge room that would just turn heads. I really think in year one. Trying to look at what else. He had 20.5 tackle for losses last season. this guy just gets in the backfield. He's disruptive. Like I said, his moves are intentional, and he's very good at it. He is a technician. So, Ricky, with that, I'll pass it to you to get a little bit more deep dive. But I love what I've seen from him, man.
No, that's good stuff, man. Thing that I'll preface or I'll start with is the thing that jumps out for me immediately with Donovan Ezeraku, and it's elite bend. You talk about his ability to get under blockers and corner and continue on his rush path. He doesn't lose his balance, he doesn't lose his momentum, and he doesn't lose his speed. That's a tremendous skill for a pass rusher, especially a speed rusher, which is exactly, Bryson, you're 100% correct. That is what he is. He is a outstanding speed rusher. I'm going to read off something that I have on my draft guide, and then if you guys want to entertain me, I will bring that slide up and present it and give everybody a look here, because I didn't even mention this, but like, this is Dane Brugler's The Beast Day. This was his draft guide that came out today. It's a great day, one of the most informative things ever. We are working on ours. I have spring break next week, but we have a release date of April 21st. Over 200 prospect profiles with write-ups, with player comps, analytics, statistics, measurements, all kinds of stuff, and specific team fit scheme ratings. So it's a really cool production that we're putting together. So I'm excited to show you all that. But for Donovan Ezeraku, I've got outstanding and highly efficient production as a pass rusher and run defender. Remarkably dangerous as a speed rusher thanks to twitchy athleticism, explosive first step, and the cerebral complements to the physical abilities. He formulates a pass rush plan, and he can execute it. Elite bend. terrific body control and tempo to his rush attack. That's what I'm talking about, where he could fire off, but he could also pace a little bit. He can literally make guys miss on their punches and ghost them entirely to get underneath them in corner. Utilizes his elite length. His length is one of the things that we haven't talked about yet. He's got 34-inch arms on a slightly under 6'3" frame. That is tremendous length. Like that is a absolute piece of the puzzle that I look at as a major plus for a prospect. Utilizes his elite length as a tackler and to finish pressures. So many times when we talk about some of these guys, you talk about Shamar Stewart, right? Shamar Stewart is a flash prospect. He's got terrific tape, man. He's got a lot of really good moments, and he doesn't finish despite his incredibly long arms. Ezeraku is kind of the opposite. He gets himself in position, and he knows what he's doing, and he finishes plays. His toolbox is full of diverse rush attacks, including a double chop, dip and rip, speed to power, and a swim move. His swim move is probably his best move, in my opinion. And he plays with great natural leverage because of that shorter frame. Now, he doesn't have a huge density. He doesn't have a really strong lower half and anchor. That shows up a little bit in the run game. He can get washed out. But what does impress me about him in the run game, he's got an 8.1% missed tackle percentage. And for a guy who is not overly strong and overly powerful, that means that he's in position a lot to make good plays. And then when he gets hands on you, he's got strong enough hands to finish that play. That's a pretty remarkable thing for me. So the not so good for me is the play strength will need to improve to reach his absolute ceiling as a true 3-down winner from the outside linebacker position, as he does not project to have much alignment versatility. That's the thing with Donovan as compared to a guy like a Jalen Walker or even a Mykel Williams or a Shamar Stewart even, right? Is they're going to line up in multiple different techniques, different roles. I think that Donovan Ezeraku is a stand-up 7 or 9 tech, wide 9 being his best alignment for him. And then for the team fit for me for Donovan Ezeraku, I've got Ezeraku has the build and length to be a highly effective stand-up outside linebacker in odd front schemes, bringing considerable disruption from 9 tech alignment, rushing the passer. High character, team-oriented guy. With Carolina showing interest, he's in play at pick number 8, but a prime trade back candidate for round 1 as well. I will share this now if I can. See how I bring this up.
Yeah, and while you're doing that, Ricky, I'm going to tell you what my plans are on April 21st when this drops. I'm going to light some candles in the bathroom. I'm going to lock the door. And I'm going to go page by page and read. And if my wife knocks, I'm going to tell her to leave me alone because it's Bryson.
Carolina Draft Guy Day.
Yeah, I'm excited for it, man. You've put a lot of work into this, and I know you're passionate about it. And I think that it's just amazing when, fans like us, like you don't get paid to do this. You're doing it for the love of the game. And I think, the passion you can see just in this little excerpt here that there's a lot of detail, and Panthers fans should be all over this shit leading up to the draft.
Thanks, man. I really appreciate that. That's super kind of you to say all that. And it is true. I do not get paid. I am working myself to the bone trying to do this thing. I'm up every night, but you know what? It's worth it, man, because I absolutely love this. And there are some fan bases out there that have this, that have, 5, 6, 7 guys that work on this. We got a few guys that are working with me. We've consulted some of the really smart guys in the NFL circles. Honest NFL, I'd love to give him a shout out real quick because I consulted him and spoke with him about defensive coverages and schematics, structures of scheme, fronts, things, all of that kind of nature. Incredibly smart guy, one of the best follows you could ever do on Twitter if you want to learn football. So we didn't just think that we were the experts here. We tried to actually speak to the experts so that we could get the best information. But you'll see here, this is like an example of the page layout, right? And we'll have one of these for each profile that we do. We'll have one of these pages dedicated to that player. On this one, we have a player comp screen is the visual aid on the far right. My player comp for Donovan Ezeraku is Nick Bonito, who Ajiro Evero also is going to have a little familiarity with, right? Was drafted out of Oklahoma to the Denver Broncos. Again, man, he is a pure speed rusher. There are elements to his game that might be a little bit of a hindrance and prevent him from being a 3-down player right out of the gate. Doesn't mean he will not impact the game right out of the gate. You'll see at the top underneath his name, man, we have a few badges. Those badges will be on any page that they fit. That 30 right there is for an official 30 visit. That will notate to you that the Panthers did bring them in for a private visit. The binoculars to the right mean that the Panthers were in attendance for their pro day. And then the Reese's Senior Bowl logo is pretty obvious. That means that he was a participant at the Senior Bowl, which the Carolina Panthers have an affinity for. A lot of the guys that they've met with were Senior Bowl participants. So this is kind of like that connecting the tea leaves. figuring it out. You'll see the fit rating down there is a Panther head. You'll get 1 to 5 of those, depending on how good the fit is. And for Donovan Ezeraku, man, it just couldn't be a better fit as far as bringing a speed rusher in at that wide 9 alignment, and the production, the character, everything that he has. Just an absolutely tremendous prospect. So thanks for letting me share this too. I appreciate it. I hope that everyone will look forward to this thing. And when it comes out, we're not asking for any money. This is just for an enjoyment. If you want to donate, we are going to accept like a cash or PayPal or Venmo type of situation. And we're going to take all of that money and donate it to a charity. So there will be no money put in our pockets, but we absolutely can take some money if you want to show appreciation and put it to a better cause.
And I do want to shout out, like Bryson did, Ricky, and everyone that's working on this. Edgar, I know you have a few other folks, but this shit, people don't realize this takes a lot of time. I mean, you're going through sitting down and dedicating time to watching a guy play highlights with no sound and just watching all 22s all the time. Sometimes it's not fun. Like you sit there and you're racking your brain like, holy shit, I got another one to do. Like this, the amount of time that Ricky and everyone puts into this, I can only imagine. I watched tape on some guys, but the amount of work you guys put in, I cannot even imagine. I can't. I really can't. So kudos to you guys for doing this, because this fan base better be grateful, because this is going to be dedicated to the Panthers. Am I correct on that?
Yeah, 100%. So I scrapped the one that I did last year. I just did a big board that had 50 write-ups and then 100 just ratings, right? Just grades. This one is going to have over 225 full prospect evaluations for every single one of them, and it is dedicated specifically to the Carolina Panthers. The only position that we will not have write-ups for is going to be the quarterback position. We will still have the rankings on that, but we did not spend the time to try to allocate it to a better resource.
All right, let's get back to it here. And Ricky, I'm sure, has a couple more he's going to show us as we get through this list. Bryson, let's start with you on number 2 here. Again, I think the rest of the way, everyone's different. So here we go. Everyone's different here. So tell us about Carson.
Yeah, this is a guy that Carolina's brought in on 30. A guy that I like a lot. I really do. I think the fit is questionable in Carolina in Evero's defense with the 3-4. I believe he's more of a 4-3, like will linebacker, but this is a guy that when you cut the tape on, he's sideline to sideline, man, and he doesn't have a whole lot of starting production, because I think last season was his only season that he was a full-time starter. But he led the Big Ten in total tackles last season with 136 tackles. 8.5 of those were for tackle for losses, and he came away with 4 sacks. A 4.7 40, at the combine. This guy is, I think, a quintessential sideline to sideline linebacker, and also brings value to the special teams. We talked about it earlier with losing Sam Franklin. Some of these players are in this draft you can replace and bring value through other players in this draft. And I think this is one of those guys that I'm not sure where I think I read an article today, I believe by Jared Feinberg, that he did for the what he does for Sports Illustrated with the Rams. And I think this guy's getting potential first round grades from teams. So I'm not sure where it's falling. I think there's questions in regards to where he goes, but if this guy's sitting there in 2nd or 3rd round, man, I'm having a hard time passing him up, because I think he just brings a lot of versatility. Like I said, the natural fit is the 4-3, but I think just getting a good player and not worrying about scheme fit, which we've preached all offseason, get good football players and worry about that scheme later, and just see where they fit in on your team. I think this is one of those guys, man, because I really like him. He's a little bit undersized at that position, but I think his football IQ is off the charts. I mean, he's reading plays. I mean, I'm not going to say it, but he's a very good football player, at that linebacker position. And I think he's undervalued right now. So that's why I had him at 2. In Carolina showing interest really kind of maybe raised him up a little bit on my rankings personally. But I like him, and I think if Carolina comes away with him, from this draft, I'm going to be very happy.
Yeah, I'll go here if that's cool with you, Ricky.
Yeah, I was going to ask him who he was talking to there, or who he's talking about there, but he was not going to say it.
Nah,
he's going to hold off.
Yeah.
I'm going to go with Darian Porter. for my number 2, the cornerback out of Iowa State. And this is a guy I mentioned a while back, probably about a month ago. He's got the length and the height that Carolina wants, 6'3". I think he's like 195. But he's got a coverage grade. He's a 90.1 on PFF. He's really good in zone coverage. That's where he kind of, made his money at Iowa State. 91.1 in zone coverage, and they ran a lot of zone. That was their style defense. And, we all saw the charts last year. Cover 3 was Ejiro Evero's cream of the crop when it came to the Panthers defense. I don't know if it's because they didn't play much man at Iowa State, but he's a little bit slighted when it comes to man coverage. But he did have 3 interceptions last year. He's got a track background, won a ton of awards in high school for track. So he's got the speed. He ran a 4th at the combine, which is awesome. And I think that might boost his value a little bit. He topped out at almost 24 miles an hour, which was, I think, like top 3 in the draft for a corner. He was recruited as a wide receiver at Iowa State, and then he switched to corner. So he does have a wide receiver background, which I think could play well. I think he's got some nice play recognition at times from the games I watched. He had a really nice play against Iowa where he peeled back off of a block for an interception. A lot of the guys I like are guys that aren't going to give up on plays, and I've talked about that numerous times with people that we've talked about. And there was a play, Caleb Johnson, most folks know him. I would say one of the top 7 backs or so in this draft, and chased him down from the 20 to the opposing 30-yard line. So, I mean, the guy was just he saved them a touchdown. He really did. Made a hell of a tackle from the opposite side of the field. So I do think he's got value. I do think there are some things. I think you could see this guy maybe in the 3rd. He can maybe rise to the 2nd. It's so hard to tell. But I've seen kind of like a 3 to 4 round range for him. But I do think teams are going to be a little bit higher on speed, because that's just something you really can't coach. So I do like him. I think he could compete, and I'm entirely not, sold on Mike Jackson like some people are. So I do think adding to that room and even competing for that nickel spot too with Show Smith Wade, I think you got to add depth to that room, because those 3, you really don't have anyone. So corner needs to be addressed in this draft. And I know I've heard some folks say this is kind of a down year for corners for this draft, but I do think Porter would add some value to that room. So that's my number 2. Ricky, you got corner as well. Tell us about Trey Amos.
I do, man. I love Trey Amos. He's one of my favorite corner prospects in this draft. I've got him as my 4th ranked in the entire class with a 1st round grade. He's a top 25 prospect for me. I think that there's a possibility he could slide out of round 1, but I don't think that that's going to be shocking if he is taken around 1 either. So this is a little bit of a pipe dream for me. Why I like Trey Amos, like his fluidity from an athleticism standpoint is ridiculous. His hips, the oily hips that he has, you'll hear that saying. I mean, these things, it's like he sprayed WD-40 in his pants before he went out there on the field every single week, man. This dude is so smooth in his transitions. His footwork is so tight and concise. His mirroring ability. So he's outstanding as a press man corner, which also I want to make sure that like we don't just look at only zone corners, because if we want Ejiro Evero to kind of loosen the grips a little bit on what he does, I think that it really helps to have well-rounded prospects that could do multiple things, right? Because one of the problems that with Mike Jackson in place that he is right now at cornerback 2, that's really all he does is zone coverage. He is not a man cover corner. Like if you put him in space one-on-one with a receiver, you don't sleep well at night. JC Horn can't really follow one guy around, because then all of a sudden you're asking Mike Jackson to do something that he shouldn't be doing. I think that if you got a guy who can cover man really well, but also Trey Amos is a perfect fit for a quarters cover 3 type of zone coverage scheme, which I don't know if anyone has heard this. Stop me if you have. But the Carolina Panthers played a ton of cover 3, more than almost anybody in the league last year. And they did it in Denver when Ajiro was the cover or was the coordinator there too. It's not just because of the personnel here in Carolina. He likes it. He likes that coverage. And I think that the ball skills, the ability to disrupt at the catch point for Trey Amos, phenomenal. The play recognition. One of the main things that I've learned about the Vic Fangio system, and Ajiro Evero is a descendant of the Vic Fangio coaching tree and of that defense, is the ability to key and react from the secondary is one of the most integral components of finding success in that role. And Trey Amos' field awareness and ability to read and react is maybe as good as anyone in this class outside of Jahdae Barron, in my opinion. So I think that he would be a tremendous fit if he were to fall. Outstanding. I would even move up in the second if you had to get him if he started to slide.
Ricky, start with you on this back end. First time going for the third pick, and we've heard about this guy about a gazillion times on the show. But tell us about Jacob Harris.
You have, man, and look, I'm going to keep on doing it until either it materializes or I get to wave my finger like an angry old man and say, "I told you so." Jacob Parrish. So we just talked about the versatility with the corners. Parrish is undersized. I could bring up, I have his slide, so I'll just bring it up while I'm talking here. He's undersized. He's a hair under 5'10" at the combine. But he's got a good frame, actually, man. He's like 191, 193 pounds, depending on the day. His pro day was 193, combine 191. Long arms, though. He's got about 31-inch arms. You can see he's just under 30 there, or just under 31 on this prospect page because we used all combine results so that it was the same thing. The play style is Trent McDuffie because he's got super disruptive hands at the line of scrimmage. He will punch you directly to the chest. He's got great timing, great placement of his hands. He can knock you off his route immediately. But the thing that I love about Jacob Parrish and why I think he's such a great fit for the Carolina Panthers, I don't think that he's going to play a lot of outside corner in the next level. I think that this is your future top 5 nickel corner in the NFL. This dude plays a physical brand of corner. He wants to get in on you, but he also has the ridiculous speed to the recovery speed that if he doesn't land that initial attack, he could get back to you quickly, man. 4.35 at the combine. His change of direction and his lateral movement matches that. His athleticism is through the roof, man. Vertical was almost 38 inches. Broad jump of almost 11 feet. 12 reps on the bench for a guy his size is also something not to scoff at. He's 21 years old. He played 24 straight games the last 2 years, so durability is not an issue. I think at worst what you were looking at with Jacob Parrish, and I start looking at Jacob Parrish around that pick 74, right? I have a second round grade on him personally. That's what I got for him. So I wouldn't even complain if he was a second round pick. I don't think that you're going to see all that many NFL teams jumping at the bit for him, but I think Mikey Sainristil's success that he had in his rookie season absolutely bodes well for a guy like Jacob Parrish. Willing to get involved in the run game. You don't want him in the scrum. Because of his size, because of his frame, he can get washed out. If he's in there with the hog mollies, they can move him. But as far as a tackler in space, which is what you want from a nickel, terrific. I mean, absolutely terrific, man. Great instincts, great ball production, 5 interceptions over the last couple of seasons. I don't know, man. I see this guy play football, and he is one of the stickier coverage guys. He is one of the more fearless defenders, and that attitude that he brings to the game and the intelligence with the athleticism, I just don't think we have that package here in Carolina, and I would love to see it.
I haven't seen much. I haven't watched a lot on him, but I did see one highlight where he got cooked by Tet McMillan. That's the only thing I can keep I can get out of my mind.
You should check another. There's other reps in that same exact game because I know what you're talking about. There are other reps in that same exact game of him taking Tet McMillan out of a play, and Tet McMillan has about 7 or 8 inches on this guy.
See, that's why I need to watch him more. That's the only one. Like I saw him and I'm like, is this the guy Ricky's talking about?
Sure is. Oh yeah.
But, Bryson, let's go to you here for your next guy. And is it Siobhan Revel? God, I should know that. He went to ECU.
Yep. Siobhan Revel Jr. So this is a guy that I'm newer in watching. Honestly, I think Zach Griffin in the chat kind of mentioned him on Twitter and was like, "Hey, check this guy out." And I've learned a little bit more about him over the past couple weeks. I think the main concern with him right now is that he's coming off a major injury. I think he tore his ACL in September of 24, I believe, at practice. But this is a corner that was getting first round potential grades a year ago, prior to the injury coming off of 2023 season. He's 6'2", 194, runs a 4.40. One of the things when I was reading about him that pop up a lot is from Amazon warehouse to the NFL, because this is a guy that was working in an Amazon warehouse and now is looking at potentially being drafted on an NFL team. He's going to get drafted, but I really like what I've seen. He plays the game with a physical edge. He really does. The mentality that he plays with really reminds me of a J.C. Horn type cornerback. He's one of the taller corners in the draft, and he has the speed as well. So you have that combination together. You cut him with tape. It's impressive. It really is. Again, the injury concerns are there, and what's that return looking like for him to be healthy on the field? It's a question. I think that there are concerns from the fan base and probably the front office in regards to that and what happened last season with Jonathan Brooks. But this is a player that you take a chance on, and if it works out, I think they're going to be very, very happy with what they get in return. I think he also adds special teams contributions as well. Can play the gunner on special teams. He's just got that nasty dog attitude. He's not afraid to step up and run support. He does everything you want from that potential cornerback 2 opposite of J.C. Horn. Like I said, he got the size that I know Evero and this front office really values at that position. And I think if he's healthy and on the field, he could be a difference maker for this team. So I'm not exactly sure at this point. Ricky, maybe you have a better idea of what his grade is looking like in regards to what teams value him at in the second, third, fourth round. But I really like what I see from this guy.
Yeah, I think that he's a consensus looking like a second round pick. If he hadn't have been injured, you're probably looking at, middle to the end of the first is where he was kind of pegged initially. Just as, since you guys know me and know that I'm a stickler for the pronunciations of things, Curtis is one of my favorite people in the world for introducing me to Trayvon Merrick so that I didn't sound like an idiot on that one. This guy's name is actually pronounced Savon Ravel. So if you want to sound like the smartest, so if you want to sound like the smartest guy at the party, there you go. There's your trick. You just go over to everyone and be like, "Hey, you seen any Savon tape lately?" But no, I like Savon, man. He's a good ball player. I've got concerns about the upright athleticism and stance that he has coming off of that injury and competition concerns. But that really good pick, man. I like him.
Savon Ravel. That sounds like a Seinfeld character name. I don't know why.
Wearing the pirate shirt and everything.
I went safety here. Xavier Watts. I do think this is a pretty big need for Carolina, and I do think they'll address it within the first couple rounds of this draft. I don't know if this guy is where I have him ranked of where he's going to fall. But if you want a ball hawk safety, this is your guy. 13 picks. I think he had 7 pass breakups. He can find the ball majority of the levels of the field on the defensive side. And I think Carolina could use someone like him. He's kind of a tone setter. He's a little aggressive. So I think that is where he kind of can make some mistakes, is his aggressive style of play. But I am all for a guy that's going to go out and, try to make a play on the ball, because I think Carolina has lacked that over the past few years when it comes to turnovers. I do think there's, other safeties in this draft, but just the way I based this ranking off of, I thought, Carolina could really use a ball hawk, and I think he could pair well with Merrick in the back end there, because as much as I like Damani Richardson and hope he develops even more, I think Carolina needs to find a starter, and I don't think Nick Scott's the answer there from the guy. I think he's more of a special teams player. And I do think Watts fits into that zone scheme. And I know, Ricky, you want to talk about that zone scheme that Evero runs right now. I think he fits well in that. So he's my third. I guess I will start on the fourth here, and that's Femi. We talked about him last week with Justin Mello and, his interview. This was a guy that I kind of with at the Senior Bowl watching that game. He had 2 sacks. He was all over the field, always making plays. 33 and a third inch arm. So he fits that threshold for Carolina when it comes to edge rusher. His weight, 259, little slighted, 6'3", had a 36 and a half inch vertical, which was, I think, like 5th among edge rushers, a 10-foot broad jump at the combine. But just watching some of the plays he made, both in games and at the Senior Bowl, he went through a left tackle and a running back to get to the QB. That was one play that came to mind for the sack. He went from an off-ball linebacker at Cal, and then he got moved to edge rusher at UCLA, and I felt like that's where he kind of found a niche in the defense. 13 and a half tackles for loss. He had 4.5 sacks. He got the Kenny Clark, if you guys don't know him, Green Bay Packer, the UCLA top defensive lineman, and that's over, a guy like Carson as well. Like he played really well with that defense and making that transition. So for him, I think he's got a hybrid type, which could be beneficial for Carolina. And you can kind of move him around a little bit. And he's very raw. And that's the thing about him. I think if you could get this guy later and Carolina wants to beat his developmental staff, I think he's got untapped raw potential there where I'm comfortable taking a flyer on this guy because I do think altogether he has the tools. He can be, I'm not talking double-digit sack guy, but I think he can be a contributor in that edge room where you're deploying platoons all the time. I think you can put him in and slot him in, and he's going to come up and make a play. And that's the type of player I think he could be in this league. I'm not talking about a 10, 15 sack type of dude. I'm talking about a 4 to 6 or 4 to 7 type of sack guy where he can come in and make some plays on this defense when he's brought in. So Femi, love his story. And, Justin, he talked about him last week and how he texted him like after the fact. Like he seems like he would fit in within this Panthers locker room. So someone I fell in love with at the Senior Bowl, like I said. But Bryson, why don't we go to you for number 4? Sorry, it's hard to see with that yellow. I should have chose a different color.
No, it's okay. Braden Swinson. I think this is a guy that we've drafted at least once in our mock drafts. Late bloomer, so a little bit opposite of Femi. This is not a raw prospect that's coming to the NFL that you don't really know what you're getting. I believe he's coming off a senior season at LSU, transferred from I can't remember the school off the top of my head, but transferred to LSU and had a decent senior year. 8.5 sacks, 13.5 tackles for losses. He's 6'4", 255, so slightly undersized at that edge position, but this is a guy that when you watch him on tape, I think his first step is really, really good, and I would argue probably top 5 in this draft class. It's very explosive, and he's got the length and the closing burst that I think is disruptive off that edge. I think just watching him really just – I think the main thing that I come away saying when watching him is just he's an athlete. He's got the athleticism off the edge, and I think he could come in and potentially be one of those rotational pieces similar to Femi. Femi may have a higher upside than Braden on the next level at the NFL, but I think Braden could come in and potentially be more of an impact on day one. So just weighing that in the draft room. So thank you, Carter, from Oregon to LSU. So I like Swinson a lot. Obviously, there's concerns there, but I think potentially he could be a very good piece for this defensive line in this draft class if they come away with him.
Yep. It's a good pick too, man. I like Braden, and I think he fits really well with the scheme. My fourth guy is a guy, again, that the Panthers have had interest in and that they're brought in. Ashton Gelati. He is the rush end out of Louisville. Look, here's my thinking with this, right? And we talked earlier about the potential of double dipping at edge. What I love is getting a pure speed guy like Donovan Ezeraku early, right? And then give me a guy like Ashton Gelati that has some of the heaviest hands in this draft class. You want to see a guy pack a thud in his hands? Go watch some Ashton Gelati. This dude is strong. He's powerful. About 2 years ago, they changed the defensive scheme there in Louisville. He was used kind of like as a Swiss Army knife, but more so inside earlier on in his career, in like the 5 tech kind of role. These past couple seasons, especially this past season, he got some freedom, man, and they put him outside. He's got a little bit shorter arms. I believe he's sub 33, like 32 and a half. 6'3", 270-ish, 267, 270-ish for a frame. I like the power profile that he brings, but his play style, this may be the thing that I like so much about him, is that the play style isn't strictly limited to power. He's a pretty flexible athlete for a guy with that frame. He plays with his hair on fire. You talk about a revved up motor that doesn't quit. That's Ashton Gelati. And one thing I do know about the Carolina Panthers, they love that. They value that. They value the guys that don't have quit in them. It was one of the reasons I was as surprised as I was to see the DJ Johnson selection. Not that he was like a lazy football player by any means, but he didn't run hot like a lot of the times that you see them. Even if you're going to base your pick off of traits and abilities, I still want that motor, man. I still want that drive. Ashton Gelati has that. He's got a really strong lower half. That's where he generates a lot of his power, a lot of his torque. Good pass moves, 2 good pass rush moves. It's not like he's strictly I'm bigger, I'm stronger than you, I'm going to dominate. No, he has a limited frame, and he still continuously gets production. Had a season-high sacks. Really just is scratching the surface, in my opinion, on what he can be, as this is only really like 2 years of an example of a sample size of what he would do from a more stand-up kind of outside alignment. But he could put his hands in the dirt and rush from a 6-eye, a 7. He can hold up at the point of attack and run defense. I just think that you're looking at a guy that is going to really appeal to the Carolina Panthers, and that could be a real target in that 74 to 114 range, potentially even after that. I would be surprised. I'm going to tell you that I'm way higher on him, so I'm going to sound like an idiot. He is my edge 11, and he is a top 75 prospect for me. And I think that will be validated when he gets his time in the NFL. I think he could even tighten up a little bit on his body, which he's done the past 2 years. I think you could see this guy be 6'3", 265 on Sundays and a ball of muscle and energy. And give me that, because that makes me terrified as an offensive coach. If you've got that guy across from you, that gives me problems. And we've had problems with guys like that, and we don't have anyone like that on the roster. So I want to bring in stuff that we don't got.
Bryson, why don't you kick things off for the fifth pick here, or the 5th person on your list?
Yeah, starting off in the middle, cool. So it's going to be a guess to who goes second. All right, this is honestly one of my favorite players in this draft. I really, really like Billy Bowman Jr. Out of Oklahoma. He's undersized at the safety position, but you turn on the tape and just pretend like you don't know his height and his weight. He does not play like a 5'10", 192 safety. He plays like a 6'2", 210 guy out there. He is fearless. He is not afraid to get involved. They talk a lot about that dog mentality, and I talked about it with a couple other guys on my list. Billy Bowman brings that every down on the field. He is that ball hawking type safety. I think in 2023 he had 6 interceptions, 3 of which were returned for touchdowns, pick sixes. In 2024, you kind of saw more of a complete game from him. 2 games that really stuck out are the Auburn game. He had 8 tackles, and then he had a really important interception in the Texas game last season. The dude's fast, really fast, 4'4", 240. And I think he's got versatility. He can play, of course, the deep safety. I think he can fit in a nickel position and even like a dime linebacker. I like what he brings, and again, I'll defer to Ricky on where his consensus is right now in the draft. I would say it's probably rising the closer that we get to the draft, but for a small guy, I mean, he just brings a lot to the field. People question his tackling mechanics, which I think does show up on film a little more than I would like, but getting to the NFL level, getting to an NFL locker room with that level of coaching, I think those things can improve. I think what's most important is that mentality and that fearlessness, because you can't teach that, right? You either have it or you don't, and he brings that game in and game out. He's got the ball skills. And like I say, he's not afraid to get involved in the run defense, get his nose dirty. I really like what he brings. And Ricky, if you'll mention for me where are teams looking at him potentially right now, his draft stock.
When you start looking at the consensus on like some of these mocks and some of these like big boards and stuff, I think you're probably looking at round 4 or later. Okay. Billy Bowman Jr., I think you touched on a lot of it, Bryson. I think that he's just got a couple of things that people are going to be concerned about, maybe size deficiencies, maybe scheme specific things that they want him to do. And does he translate more to a deep safety, or is he more of an in-the-box safety? If he's in the box, is he too light for it? But you bring up his tackling, man. The one play that I'll point to, if you're worried about his tackling, look at what he did one-on-one with Luther Burden, who is one of the best yak guys in all of college football, dense build. Billy Bowman came in there like a heat rocket and just put him out of bounds. Like, he didn't let him get anywhere. So, I mean, he's got the ability, man. It's consistency for him and correct angles.
Yeah.
I'll go next here. This is another guy he caught my eye at the Senior Bowl, and it's Savion Jones. And me and Ricky had talked about this when we did our Senior Bowl recap. But this guy's toughness in that game, I mean, he kept showing up. I mean, it was like, who the hell is this? Who is this LSU guy? And he just kept showing up on tape for me. So I did a little bit more digging on him throughout these last couple months. He's kind of played both his hand in the dirt and upright at that edge spot. But I thought I think he had like 40 plus pressures this past year. So he had somewhat of a jump from the past 2 years. I think he had combined was around that in his previous seasons, but he took a leap this past season. But I think this is a guy, like, at this point in these rankings, I think he's going to be a depth piece. I know I'm going heavy with this edge group, but I think this is a group that I do think they need to double dip on in this draft at some point, whether that's a first and a fourth rounder or a second and a third or whatever, however you want to mark it up or however they go. I do think they should double dip here. But I think this guy has some toughness. I think that's one of the things that teams really like about him. He's got some inconsistency with his pad level and his hands. But if that can be coached up, I do think he could become a rotational player in this platoon for Savion and this Panthers team. So I do like him. I think he's a solid depth piece that, he's going to come away with a couple sacks in a season. And I'll take a guy, honestly, over someone like a DJ Johnson. Any way we can add to this room to get DJ Johnson out of the picture, I'm all for. So I think that guy was one of the worst picks the Panthers have made in the past couple of years, and they've made a lot of them. So I do think he would add some juice, just his energy on the field, and I think he'd be a good depth piece. Ricky, why don't you end it here with Kuba?
Yeah. Savion, one interesting thing about him as well, Curtis, is that he may end up transitioning inside more than playing edge in the NFL. He bulked up for the Senior Bowl. I believe they had him weighed in at like 290 and played a lot of inside defensive front. So that may be him and Jared Ivey are two players that are very similar in that regard, that they played a lot outside in college just because they use that size and athleticism. But that athleticism goes away a little bit in the NFL, right? When you talk about like the relative to what you're playing against, you're not going to overwhelm. So he may see a lot inside, which also, though, Curtis, man, to your point, may really be appealing for Carolina. They like that. And that Tershawn Wharton is a good indication of the kind of player they're looking for. All right, Andrew Makuba. So, I'm high on this guy individually. He's my safety 3 which is higher than most consensuses you would see. I think that Andrew Makuba would fit absolutely perfect with the Carolina Panthers. He is a downhill free safety. Put him in center field, let him roam, let him use his instincts, let him use his lateral movement ability, which is outstanding. I'll bring up one last slide since we're coming to the end of it while I do my talking here. Makuba, I mean, look, dude, here's the thing with him. He's small, right? Like frame-wise, he's a hair under 6 foot, but he's a good bit under 200 pounds. He's about 186 pounds, I think, is what he weighed in at the combine. But his play style, and you'll see the comp that I have here in the draft guide. I've got the play comp to CJ Gardner-Johnson. From a physical build, Gardner-Johnson was a lot more stout and compact. He was about 5'11", 206, I think, somewhere in that range. That's not what reminds me of him. It's the way that they play the position. CJ wasn't a terrific run defender from a point of identifying and being in the right place and playing the run fits, but he wasn't scared to wallop somebody, and he came screaming downhill. He's great in coverage, has terrific instincts, is a ball hawk. You talked about Xavier Watts. Andrew Makuba is right there in my mind with him, like head and shoulders above everybody else, neck and neck. I think that Andrew Makuba is the aggressive downhill type of safety that would thrive in a Fangio type of system, the Ejiro Evero one. And I also think that when you talk about strictly from a complementary standpoint to Trayvon Merrick, this is exactly what you want. If you're going to have Merrick playing closer to the line of scrimmage more often, and you're going to have him kind of as that chess piece, Makuba is the one that can rotate over when you want to open or close that middle of the field. He is literally the guy that you want to put on an island back there in space. That is what he can do. That is where he excels. So I think that from a fit standpoint, Andrew Makuba is absolutely tremendous. We have not met with him. He didn't do much. He wasn't in attendance at the Texas Pro Day. Carolina was, because that was or they were at the Texas Pro Day, I believe, but that Andrew didn't do anything. So there is no clear connections for Carolina and Andrew Makuba. But if he were to be there, and look, he didn't test all that great in the agility drills. And there is a real possibility that teams will look at this and say, sub 200-pound safety that comes screaming down, wants to lay the hits, but we don't really trust that his frame could withstand that. And he doesn't have exemplary agility skills or tests at least. Maybe he falls in that 4th round, and he would be one of those players that Carolina would learn a lot from great teams like the Eagles and stuff, that when a premier player who played terrific in college, the tape is the story for Andrew Makuba. He played at Clemson, and at Clemson, he showed ability to play in the slot. He showed the ability to press man, and then he played deep at Texas. That is the tape you need to see, man. Those are 2 premier programs, and he did well at both. So I just think that if he's one of those guys that slides, I wouldn't make a move up to get him necessarily, but if he slides, I'm taking him and I'm not looking back, to be completely honest.
Interesting. And Bryson, this is not a knock on the picks you made. I'm just curious. Any thought to add a safety to your rankings at all?
Yeah, Billy
Bowman.
Yeah.
Oh, Billy Bowman. I'm sorry.
Yeah. It's okay.
Clearly knows how much I know about Billy Bowman, so I'm glad you put him on there. But I didn't realize that at all. Let me talk about though, because I did have something to bring up about the safeties. So we all did pick a safety in this. But I apologize for looking at my phone, because I wanted to bring this up because Mike K put this in an article today, and I thought it was really interesting. I picked a different SOT, man, I'm in producer mode now. Different SOT. I'm all over the place. You guys even know what a SOT is? Probably not.
Never heard it. You talking about sod like on the
That's what you have to do if you have Bermuda grass.
SOT. S-O-T. SOT.
I know. I was being an asshole.
It's the soundbite. But Mike put this in his article today about safeties, because I know Ricky was just talking about Makuba. This was from Dave Canales. They talked to him at the owners meeting. They had a one-on-one. He said, we have high hopes for Damani, and he got out there and he played some pretty good football last year. And we feel pretty confident that Damani's going to take another step. signing Nick Scott back was huge from a defensive standpoint. I think he's bullshitting, but also from a special team standpoint. And for me, it's just a culture fit thing for me with Scott or with Nick. Could we add a premier post safety? Sure. If that presents itself, that would be really cool. Right now, we feel confident in that group we have. So I thought that was interesting and worth kind of just talking about, because I do think there is a possibility, like maybe even in a trade back scenario, like we can't forget they brought in Emanwari from South Carolina, and I do think they really like him as a player, and he is not a guy that's fallen out of the first round. He's not. That's not happening. I'd be shocked. So do you think, Ricky, is that like a possibility at all? Like in a trade back scenario, they go and look at safety? I think edge is probably the most likely, but I do think Carolina does think they need to come out and get a safety high here.
I think I guess it's possible. I'm not as high on Emanwari that other people are. He's my safety 4. I got a 2nd round grade on him.
Yeah, you like Starks out of Georgia.
Love Starks. That's a good football player. He's not a.
Do we know if they talked to him at all? Because they were at Georgia's pro day.
They were at the pro day. But there's been no kind of official visits. Starks, I haven't seen his name involved in a lot of pro or official visits, to be completely honest. It's been kind of quiet, and I don't know if maybe that's the same thing as the Tyler Warren thing, where teams are saying, "Hey, look, we know who this is, right? Like we know what we're getting here, and we don't really need to ask too many questions about it. If he's available when we're contemplating taking a safety, we'll take him." It's not that I'm against Nick Emanwari. He's a tremendous athlete. But when you talk about coverage instincts, I have some serious questions with him on that. I don't think that he sees things as well as you would want your starting safety to. If you want to draft him and let him learn for a couple of years, sure. But who is he learning from? Damani Richardson? Yeah. And that's not a knock on Damani, but Damani is an undrafted free agent.
Does that tip their hand on how they want to play Merrick if they're interested in a guy who isn't as great in coverage, which is I don't like, because I think Merrick's better used in a different role. But
yeah, and Merrick played a lot of deep in TCU, but then when he's tried to do it in the NFL, he's had some success, but he's had a lot less success.
Yeah, exactly.
So I maybe they just look at this and say we want interchangeable pieces, and maybe they view Damani as an interchangeable piece. Maybe they think that they could swap them in and out and keep offenses on their toes and not really know what's happening on the back end of that coverage, and a lot of it will be post-snap movement. But I think that it would be silly if they went into the season with Nick Scott, Damani Richardson as your starter, one or the other as your starter, with no other competition to prove that they deserve that spot. Because what I can tell you is I don't think Nick Scott deserves that spot based on his play last season in the same exact system with a lot of the same players. I don't think he earned that even remotely. I'm surprised that he's back in Carolina. And Damani Richardson, I think that he can be promising as a developmental player. I wouldn't necessarily go that route. I see James in the chat mentioning Jonas Sanker a lot. Hey, look, here's another thing. I've talked about Jonas Sanker a ton. I am a big Jonas Sanker guy as well. We had 5 guys that we were able to talk about today. I decided to do somebody different than Sanker. I put Jacob Parrish in there, and I talk about him all the time, so I didn't want to bore everybody by talking about the same guys over and over. But Jonas Sanker would be a tremendous one. He says he suggests watching more to get familiar. James, if I watch any more film, man, I'm gonna throw up.
Have they brought him in? Do we know?
Yeah, Sanker's been in for a 30 visit. Yep.
Okay, I'm gonna watch him because I'm not familiar, and I've seen a lot on Twitter.
He's tremendous, man, and I've got him ranked higher than most people. And James, I appreciate you wanting to help me out, man, but I refuse to watch any more film. I'm fucking done.
Is there any more questions here? Let me see if I can. I asked folks. Alex is running his mouth. That's typical.
Classic.
Alex, what did you think about Duke and their performance on the national stage in the Final Four?
We're not discussing that. There was one question I had for you guys, and it comes back to this wide receiver question. Because they clearly have, they don't have a second safety right now. If you want to consider Damani maybe in that role, and then I can't see Nick Scott in that starter role anymore. I don't think they're they don't want that. I think he's primarily brought back for special teams. But let's say Bryson's are out and they go wide out first round. They still have a safety hole, and you still haven't got an edge rusher. Like, what are they doing in that second round with that scenario? Like, do you think they can get a viable safety at 57 or a viable safety in the third and still go edge at second in the second round? Like, what
was the scenario? I apologize. I was sitting there reading the comments. What was the scenario you just laid out?
Where if they would go wide receiver first round, whether that's Ted or Golden or whoever they go, and you're sitting with you need another starting safety. They're going to probably at least put Damani there and have him compete with the rookie. I don't think Nick Scott. I think Nick Scott was brought back for special teams. So if you go wide out first round or another position outside of edge rusher, what are you doing in the second and third round? And do you think there's viable options in the third or fourth round to go out and get a safety or an edge? I mean, I guess edge rusher, it's a deeper class, but
Bryson, you take that one first because you want to take the receiver at 8. So I want to hear your plan first.
Yeah, I mean, we've talked about it week in and week out of how deep this class is. Off the top of the show, we talked about, it's a good starter draft, maybe not top end talent in this draft, but you're looking at starters in rounds 3 and rounds 4 if your evaluations are correct. One of my guys on my list, Billy Bowman Jr., you asked me if there's viable safeties going to be available in rounds 3 and 4. And from what Ricky's mentioned and what I've seen online, yeah, this guy's probably going to be available in those rounds. And I think Billy Bowman Jr. can come in and make a difference. And I would argue that, it wouldn't be much of a competition between him and Damani. I really don't think it would be. I think Billy Bowman Jr. is your starter week 1 in that scenario. So adding that offensive weapon, that piece, because, okay, let's say that they go edge or they go corner or safety with the 8th pick. What's the difference in talent between the top wide receivers and the second and third round wide receivers? I'm not sure there's that big of a difference overall, but I think Tech McMillan has separated himself as, in my eyes, in my evaluation, as a clear number 1. And then and then from there it goes Golden and so forth. But I think just that talent level at that position, and one of the most important positions on the field, especially for a quarterback that's continuing to develop and needing more help on that offensive side of the ball that they haven't made any strides this offseason to add to. I think that reverse of trying to test your evaluations and get those starters in second and third round, fourth round at the safety position, at the edge position, is something that I would be willing to do to help that offensive side of the ball out.
Ricky?
So my thought process with the safety situation, if you went wide receiver at 8, right? I will say this about the safeties. The communication aspect in Evero's defense is critical. And what I wouldn't want to do would be to bank my starting safety on a 4th or later rookie. My lean there would be you're going to sign one of these veterans that are still available, because there are a number of them. Or what they're saying about Damani and Nick Scott is literally their feelings. And that is something that this regime does, man. They say things that they mean. And we're all sitting there. Yeah, dude, they don't joke around. They don't lie much.
No, and people don't realize that. I mean, I can't.
And we try to think that some of it, is, a little bit of gamesmanship or stuff. But I think that they're pretty honest about things. So they may just really like them. That makes me the tiniest bit nervous, because I don't think I like them as much, but I don't see as much as them. And they do pride themselves on being a developmental staff. Perhaps they have seen significant progress with Damani that make them feel so much more comfortable. Maybe it is the mental part of it. Maybe the cognitive part of going through and watching film, the thing that Tedero McMillan is allergic to. Maybe they go and they do that together. I'm joking. Bryson, take it easy, man. I just had to make a joke. Maybe they sit there in these film sessions and they're like, hey, dude, Damani's really picking up on this stuff. And if he's seeing it that quickly and he's understanding what our objectives are, we believe in his athleticism. That's never been our question. So if we can start to believe that the brain is going to tell the feet what to do instead of the feet telling the brain, right? Then maybe that starts to make them feel more comfortable about that prospect of him being your starter. And then you allocate that second, third, maybe even fourth, and you double, potentially even triple dip on the defensive front.
I want to go to Carter's question here quick, because I did ask folks if they had any questions for us. And he says, Ricky, what do you think about Jay Toa? Is that how you say that? From UCLA,
From UCLA, the nose tackle. Yeah, nose tackle. He's a solid prospect. I didn't do a full eval on him. I got about 2 games watched, so I won't do a full eval if I don't do at least 3. I mean, he's good, man. He's got good movement ability for a guy his size. I think that he's explosive. I think that he can anchor decently. I think that there are 4 or 5 guys that I like better in that same similar range of a 3, 4, 5 round pick or later. Toy is probably, you're talking about like a 6th or a 7th round pick, to be completely honest. But there's a guy, I'll give you a name right now that if you're not familiar with, and this is a guy that I would get familiar with, Cam Horsley, out of Boston College, interior defensive lineman. Check him out. That's a really interesting guy. And we had the connection of being at Boston College's pro day. And I think a lot of people just assume that was for either Ozzie Trapillo or Donovan Ezeraku. But there's a couple other guys, and that's Drew Kendall and Cam Horsley, that I think could be in play that meet a lot of the standards and thresholds that they look for here. But then you've also got guys like the obvious Jamari Caldwell, the Jordan Phillips out of Maryland. I don't think that what they're doing is looking to add another Jaden Crumity, which is like a 6th or 7th round pick to the defensive front. I think that if they're going to allocate a pick to this front, they're looking for someone that could be a difference maker, because you look at the contracts that they brought these new guys in on, they're 1 to 2 year deals, essentially, is what they are. They want guys that could be stalwarts and be here for a while at cost-controlled measures. And I don't think they're going to go the bargain route on positions that you can't get dynamic players at.
Sorry, I'm just reading. Oh, okay. I want to end on this, and then we'll wrap up here, because I do think Mike K put out a really good article today on his one-on-one with both Canales and Morgan. And we've had this talk before about what role Christian Roseboom will have on this team. But, I mean, it clearly sounds like this guy is going to be pushing both Jewell and Trevin Wallace for a starter spot. Like, that's his role coming in. Like, he can push these guys. And, I mean, you can't forget he had 134 tackles last year, his best year, knows the system. Like, this is like a put up or shut up type moment for Trevin Wallace in his second year to make that next leap, just from some of the comments Morgan and Canales has said. And he obviously had some special teams value as well, but I do think, like, we need to consider this guy. Like, he might be looking, obviously, too, with like the Shaq gone now and, injuries within that room they've had these past couple of years. This guy is a real shot to be the starter coming into the season. He really does. And I don't know if folks realize that.
It's surprising. One of the things that I wanted to ask the person that was supposed to be here today, I guess we'll refer to him as no person for this episode. But I was going to ask if there was a sense that, like, some of these prospects that we're talking about, interior or inside linebackers, tight ends, even saying that like the nickel position still isn't solidified, right? These are positions that we've drafted players to play in the past couple of seasons. Edge, DJ Johnson. Now, granted, these are 3rd or later picks, but there's a lot of teams in the NFL that are building their roster with 3rd and 4th round picks as their depth and getting starters out of it. This Panthers team has not shown the ability to do that. Is there this feeling that they've already, identified that something may be wrong with the 3rd round pick out of last year, with the 4th round pick out of last year, with the 3rd round pick out of the previous year? Because we know they already cut ties with the 2nd round pick out of the previous year. So, like, are they starting to say, not only do we not have the young pieces from the past 2 drafts that we feel good about, we're kind of starting fresh. Like from all of these positions, I was interested to see if there was any inside kind of knowledge there. But I guess I'll just ask you two gentlemen, since y'all were willing to hang out tonight.
Yeah, I think it's going back to when we talked about that tight end that frustrated you, Ricky, in signing him, and then hearing things about obviously this is the tight end is a player that's going to have to come in and be developed. We talked about that, but then questioning the linebacker that many people said was overdrafted when he was drafted in Carolina, but had some flashes in his first season, had some not so great moments in his first season. I think bringing in competition to challenge him is important, and hopefully that raises his level of play. But I think dismissing him in his second season and not allowing him to continue to be on the field with hopefully an improved defensive line in front of him, I think that would be extremely dismissive of and short-sighted of this front office, especially when we talk about our GM being a linebacker that identified a linebacker that he liked, was higher than most of the league on this player, and then moving on from him after 1 year. I can tell you right now, Christian Roseman is not starting over Josie Jewell. In no world is he starting over Josie Jewell. So you can throw that out of the window.
Bryson will fight you fist to fist if that happens.
That's not happening. It's not. The only way he's starting is if Josie Jewell can't be on the field due to injury over him. So I think, if Christian Roseman comes in and challenges him, good. That's good. But I don't know if Roseman is looking better in camp and preseason makes some plays and then starting Roseman week 1 and then kind of throwing Trevin to the side after 1 year is an extremely smart move for this front office, because, again, you invested a high-level draft pick in him. You identified him. You kind of threw it out there like, hey, you guys might not like him, but we like him. We love him. And we're going to take him a lot earlier than what you guys think he's valued at. So give Trevin another season, man. I really think he deserves it, at least based off of your own evaluations.
Well, I think we're going to leave it there. I first want to say I apologize whoever tuned in to hear from Joe Person. I'll figure out what happened there, and I do take this shit seriously, so I'm sorry to everyone that tuned in to listen to that, and we'll make it up to you guys. But hopefully our conversation over the last 2 hours was good. I thought we had really good dialogue about some of the prospects defensively. We will be talking offense next week. So stick around for that. Alex, you better be in here before anyone else. You're the offensive guy. You better be in. Ricky will not be with us next week, but he will be providing us with his rankings. You appreciate that. He will get to enjoy spring break. And, we got 1 week. It'll be next week, and then we got the draft coming up, and we got a big show for you guys the week of the draft. It's going to be a little bit earlier in the week than, that Wednesday time frame typically, because I'll be to go to said draft. But we will do a mock of what we think, or not, what we would do the week of the draft. We're going to have JJ, Edgar, and Kevin coming back on like we've done the past couple seasons, and we will try to do a 7th round. It'll be just solely a mock draft unless something comes up before then with Carolina. I'm sure Dan and Brant and Dave will do their pre-draft pressers like they do every year. So hopefully we get a little tidbits there. But me and Bryson will be back next week. We'll be talking offensive rankings, and Bryson and I will also try to predict what the Panthers do with a mock draft after that. So stick around for that. It'll be fun. But until then, we appreciate everyone who has come on in the chat and showed up tonight. Ricky, Bryson, thank you guys as always. We will see you guys next week, and keep pounding.